Some wounds don't bleed. They sit quietly inside your chest, pretending to be normal. You smile. You go to work. You say, "I'm fine." But inside, something is quietly dying. And it's worse when the knife came from someone who says they love you. It's not easy to admit this. That the person making your life miserable is someone you're supposed to care about. A parent. A partner. A brother. A childhood friend. Someone who holds a place in your heart, but also keeps hurting you again and again. And the pain isn't always loud. It's not always screaming or broken dishes. Sometimes it's silent control. Mockery dressed as jokes. Guilt-tripping disguised as love. It's the quiet erosion of your spirit, one sarcastic comment at a time. You sit across the dinner table and feel like you're shrinking. You tell them about something good that happened, and they roll their eyes. You try to set a boundary, and they say you're selfish. You ask for space, and they accuse you of abandoning them. And the worst part, you begin to question if you're the problem. This is the trap. When the toxic person is a stranger, we can walk away. When it's someone close, we hesitate. We second guess. We make excuses. We say, they didn't mean it. They're just stressed. They had a hard childhood. We choose empathy over self-respect. But here's a truth you must face, as painful as it is, just because someone is family doesn't mean they are healthy for you. Just because someone is close doesn't mean they deserve access to your mind, your peace, your life. Love without respect is poison. Affection without safety is manipulation. And if someone constantly belittles, drains, or controls you, no matter who they are damaging your soul. You might still care about them. That's what makes this so hard. You remember the good times. The way they laughed with you. The way they were there when no one else was. And now you feel guilty even thinking of creating distance. But here's what I want to tell you, setting boundaries with toxic people is not betrayal. It's survival. It's self-preservation. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. You are not here to be someone's emotional punching bag. You are not here to be gaslit into silence. You are not here to constantly sacrifice your well-being to keep the peace. That is not peace, that is quiet suffering. Toxic relationships thrive in confusion. They thrive when you doubt yourself. That's why the first step is to see clearly. Remove the fog of guilt. Ask yourself, how do I feel after being with this person? Do I feel smaller, less worthy, more anxious? Do I feel drained, confused, afraid to be myself? Your body knows the truth before your mind can accept it. Listen to it. There are people who will never hit you, never scream at you, but will damage your self-esteem so slowly you won't notice it until you wake up one day and feel like a shadow of yourself. It's not weakness to protect yourself. It's strength. It's not cold-hearted to walk away from manipulation. It's wisdom. And it's not your job to fix someone who refuses to admit they're breaking you. They might say you're overreacting. That's part of the game. Toxic people will hurt you and then blame your reaction. They'll call you too sensitive, too dramatic, too emotional, so they never have to face what they've done. That doesn't mean you're wrong. That means your pain threatens their control. If you grew up around this behavior, it might even feel normal. You might think love is supposed to hurt, that closeness always comes with suffering. But that's a lie you inherited, not a truth you have to live. Real love makes you feel safe, not afraid, not guilty, not invisible. And if someone consistently leaves you feeling worse about yourself, that's not love, it's emotional decay dressed in familiar clothes. You don't have to hate them to let go. You don't have to burn bridges with anger. You can simply say, I choose peace. I choose space. I choose to protect the life I'm trying to build. You may not be able to cut them off completely. Maybe they live with you. Maybe they are your parent. But even in those situations, you can create emotional distance. You can stop sharing your soul with someone who throws it back in your face. You can stop explaining yourself to someone who's only listening to win. You can stop offering honesty to someone who uses it as ammunition. Protecting yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you strong. You have one life, one mind, one heart. Don't give it to someone who keeps proving they can't be trusted with it. You probably think it's not that bad. You tell yourself, they're not evil. They just have problems. They're just under pressure. They say sorry, sometimes. You cling to these excuses like driftwood in a storm, hoping they'll be enough to stay afloat. But let me ask you something. If someone stepped on your foot every day and said, sorry, afterward, would you eventually stop noticing the pain? Or would you start limping? Emotional wounds work the same way. repetition doesn't make them less harmful. It makes them harder to see. That's how toxicity works when it comes from someone close. It blends into the background. It disguises itself as love, concern, protection. And so you start tolerating what once would have shocked you. You normalize what should never be normal. They criticize you, for your own good. They guilt-trip you, because they love you. They control your choices, because they care. And you begin to believe it. Because the human heart wants connection more than truth. It wants love, even if it's twisted. But love, real love, does not come with fear. It doesn't force silence. It doesn't break you so it can feel strong. You might ask, but what if they change? And that's a fair question. Sometimes people do change. But here's the part we don't like to hear. They don't change because you suffer quietly. They don't change because you endure. They don't change because you love them enough to break yourself. People change when they choose to. Not when you beg them to. Not when you cry in your room. Not when you pretend everything is fine. So yes, maybe they can change. But don't waste your years waiting for a version of them that may never exist. Hope is beautiful, but not when it chains you to misery. You can forgive someone and still walk away. You can understand someone's trauma and still say, I won't let it destroy me too. You can love someone deeply, and still choose to love yourself more. But let's not pretend that's easy. Toxic bonds can feel addictive. You get used to the emotional highs and lows. You start believing the good moments cancel out the bad ones. You measure love in how many times they apologize, not in how many times they don't hurt you. You shrink to keep the peace. You stay quiet to avoid the explosion. You smile so they won't ask questions. And in the process, you lose the sound of your own voice. Do you remember who you were before them? Before the anxiety in your stomach when they walk into the room. Before the second guessing, the walking on eggshells, the rehearsing every conversation in your head. That version of you, the one who laughed freely, who felt strong, who didn't feel like a burden, is still there. Just buried under layers of manipulation and guilt. And you don't owe anyone the rest of your life just because they were there for part of it. If someone keeps hurting you and refuses to take responsibility for it, you have one job. Protect your soul. That might mean pulling away slowly. That might mean setting hard limits. That might even mean going no contact, if nothing else works. But above all, it means choosing peace over permission. You don't need their approval to walk away. You don't need the world to understand. You don't need to explain it in a way that makes them look bad. You just need to trust what you feel in your bones. This relationship is costing me too much. And when you leave, even if just emotionally, you will go through grief. Not just because of what you're losing, but because of what never was. The parent you never really had. The partner who only loved the version of you they could control. The friend who disappeared when you started growing. You will grieve, not just for them, but for the hope you carried. For the belief that if you just tried harder, they would finally see you. Finally cherish you. Finally stop hurting you. But here's the truth, some people don't want to meet the real you. They want a version of you that doesn't challenge them, that doesn't ask for respect, that stays small enough to make them feel big. And when you begin to grow, when you set boundaries, say no, speak up, they don't like that version. Not because you've changed, but because now they can't control you. And that's when the guilt games begin. The tears. The accusations. The threats of abandonment. The sudden coldness. They want you back in the cage. Don't go. It's better to cry in freedom than to smile in chains. And no, not everyone will understand. Some will say you're overreacting. Some will call you selfish. Some will try to make you feel like the villain. Let them. Let them gossip. Let them whisper. Let them think what they want. Because peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being aligned with your truth, your values, your dignity. And let me tell you something else. The longer you stay in a toxic environment, the harder it becomes to believe you deserve better. That's the real damage. Not just the words they say. Not just the games they play. But the version of yourself they build in your mind. A weak one. A broken one. A quiet one. It's time to tear that image apart. It's time to rise. Because you are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are not crazy. You are not selfish for wanting peace. You are not cruel for saying, enough. You are a person worthy of respect, of gentleness, of space to grow. You may still love them. But you must love yourself first. Even if it means walking away with shaking hands and a breaking heart, walk anyway. Your healing is not up for negotiation. Not anymore. There will come a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when something inside you shifts. Maybe it happens on an ordinary Tuesday. You hear the same cruel tone, the same passive-aggressive joke, the same sigh of disappointment meant to make you feel small. But this time, something in you doesn't bend. You stand there, still, and realize, I've had enough. That moment doesn't always come with fireworks or tears. Sometimes it's as soft as a breath. But it's real. A sacred fracture in the cycle. And from that fracture, freedom begins to grow. You don't need to yell. You don't need to win an argument. You don't even need to explain. You just need to choose yourself, quietly, firmly, finally. Toxic relationships train you to believe that your value depends on how useful you are to the other person. That your worth is measured by how well you can tolerate their chaos. And when you stop playing that role, when you stop absorbing their pain, covering their lies, cleaning up their mess, they may panic. They'll say you've changed. That you're being unfair. That you're abandoning them. They might even cry. But listen carefully, tears are not transformation. Apologies are not accountability. Promises are not patterns. People who are truly sorry don't just say it, they show it. Over time, through changed behavior, through respect, through consistency. If all you get is more talk, more guilt, more manipulation, it's not change. It's just the same game with a different mask. And here's what makes it hard, toxic people aren't toxic all the time. That's what keeps you tied to them. One moment they're cruel, the next they're sweet. One day they ignore you, the next they hold your hand and say they can't live without you. That emotional roller coaster becomes addictive. You start chasing the good moments. You tell yourself, see, they can be kind. You forget that love, real love, doesn't make you chase. It doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't require you to be smaller, quieter, easier to handle. Real love meets you where you are, and lifts you, not controls you. So how do you begin to pull away? First, stop trying to get their permission to heal. They won't give it to you. They won't say, yes, please outgrow this version of yourself I can control. They will fight you. Not always with violence, but with guilt, silence, manipulation, and charm. They will use your empathy against you. But remember this, your empathy is a gift, not a leash. It is not your job to carry someone else's emotional dysfunction, especially when it crushes your own spirit. Second, prepare for the grief. Yes, grief. Even if the person is still alive, even if you still see them, you will grieve the illusion, the dream you had of who they could be, the comfort of familiarity, the rhythm, even if it was painful. Grief is not a sign you made the wrong decision. It's a sign you're letting go of what no longer serves your soul. There will be lonely nights. You might question everything. Was it really that bad? Maybe I overreacted. This is normal. This is what emotional withdrawal looks like. Because even pain becomes familiar. Even dysfunction feels like home when you've lived in it long enough. But here's the thing, you don't need proof of how bad it was. You don't need to measure the trauma like evidence in court. If it hurt you, if it broke your confidence, if it made you doubt your worth, that's enough. Your peace does not require justification. You may also notice something strange after pulling away, space, silence, time. And at first, it might feel uncomfortable. You were so used to crisis, to fixing, to being on edge. Now, suddenly, there's room to think, to breathe, to feel. You might even feel guilt. Because you were trained to believe that rest is selfish. That protecting yourself is wrong. That peace means you're abandoning someone. But it's not abandonment to stop being a target. It's not cruel to choose joy. It's not wrong to say, I've had enough. In that silence, something beautiful will begin to grow. Slowly, at first. A voice. Your voice. The one that was buried under years of fear and compliance. The one that trembled every time you said, no, the one that whispered, maybe I deserve better. That voice will get stronger. You'll start to notice what feels good, not just what feels safe. You'll learn to trust your instincts again. You'll stop explaining your boundaries like they're apologies. And you will begin to heal. Not in a straight line. Not in a perfect way. But deeply. You'll make mistakes. You might let them back in for a while. That's okay. Healing isn't about being flawless. It's about coming home to yourself, again and again. And each time you do, you'll remember. You are not responsible for someone else's growth. You are not obligated to stay just because they once made you laugh. You are allowed to say, this relationship no longer honors who I am becoming. And here's the miracle: when you let go of the wrong people, the right people start to find you. People who don't need you to shrink. People who don't use your past against you. People who listen, who respect, who love you as you are, not as you're useful. You don't have to earn that love. You don't have to suffer for it. You just have to believe you deserve it. And you do. You always did. Some days, you'll feel proud. Other days, you'll feel broken. You'll take 2 steps forward, and then a single message from them will send you spiraling back into doubt. That's part of the process. Cutting off a toxic person who's close to you isn't just about physical distance, it's about emotional rewiring. You're not just letting them go. You're unlearning everything they made you believe about yourself. You might look in the mirror and see someone who feels hollow, who's forgotten how to trust, who wonders, if they treated me this way, maybe I really am hard to love. That's the damage they did. Not just with words, but with the slow erosion of your self-worth. With the way they made you apologize for your feelings. With the way they twisted your kindness into weakness. Let's be clear, it takes courage to leave. But it takes even more courage to rebuild. To start defining who you are outside of their influence. To relearn the sound of your own thoughts without their voice echoing inside your head. And it will take time. You'll remember things. Random moments. The way they used to sigh when you entered the room, like your presence was a burden. The time they mocked your vulnerability in front of others. The way they made you feel guilty for needing rest, for having boundaries, for saying no. And every memory will sting. But that pain is proof, you're starting to see clearly now. One of the hardest things you'll face is the disbelief of others. People who didn't see what you went through. People who only saw the charming version of them, the helpful, funny, such a good person, version. They'll ask you why you're being distant. Why you're making a big deal out of nothing. And you'll feel tempted to explain. To justify. But here's something you need to hear. You don't owe anyone a story that costs you your peace. Let them misunderstand. Let them believe the version that keeps them comfortable. You lived it. You know. The truth of a relationship lives in the quiet moments, not the public ones. It lives in the way they looked at you when you cried. In the way they reacted when you needed help. In the way you had to hide parts of yourself to keep things normal. That's what counts. Not the photos. Not the smiles at dinner. Not the memories people cling to because they can't imagine someone they like being harmful. Toxic people often thrive in confusion. They're great performers. They know how to wear the right face for the crowd. But when the curtain falls, you're the one left backstage, cleaning up the mess. So yes, you'll feel alone for a while. It might feel like no one truly sees what you're going through. But that isolation won't last forever. Because eventually, the emptiness they left behind starts to fill with something new. Peace. It comes slowly, like light creeping into a room that's been dark for years. At first it feels strange. Then it feels safe. Then it feels like home. You'll start noticing things. How you don't flinch when your phone buzzes. How your chest feels lighter when you wake up. How you laugh without watching someone's reaction. How silence no longer feels dangerous. This is healing. Not dramatic. Not loud. But steady. You'll begin to recognize the difference between love and control. Between care and guilt. Between connection and obligation. And you'll stop mistaking chaos for passion. That's when you'll truly start coming back to life. Not because someone saved you. But because you did. You chose to stop tolerating pain disguised as love. You chose to protect the child inside you who never learned what safety felt like. You chose to say, this ends with me. And maybe one day, they'll try to come back. With promises. With nostalgia. With I've changed. And maybe they have. Or maybe they haven't. That's not for you to decide today. What matters is that now, you'll be different. You won't open the door with desperation. You won't need their validation to feel whole. You won't crave their chaos just to feel something. You'll pause. Breathe. Listen to your body. And if it tenses, if your stomach knots, if your heart races, if something deep inside whispers, not again, you'll honor that voice. Because it's yours. And it knows the way home. There is no shame in protecting yourself. No weakness in saying, I've had enough pain. No failure in stepping back from someone who refuses to grow. In fact, that's strength. That's healing. That's becoming someone new. Someone no longer ruled by fear or guilt or the past. And one day, you'll sit across from someone who treats you with real respect, who listens when you speak, who doesn't need to put you down to feel powerful. And you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Safe. Not excited in a frantic, anxious way. Not hooked on the high and low of toxic intimacy. Just, calm, warm, seen. And in that moment, you'll realize, this is what love was always supposed to feel like. Not survival. Not fear. Not pretending. Just peace. You won't even notice the exact moment it happens, but one day, you'll stop looking back. You'll stop replaying conversations in your mind, trying to understand what you did wrong. You'll stop waiting for an apology that never comes. You'll stop feeling that constant pull of guilt every time you choose yourself over them. Because you'll have finally learned something they never wanted you to realize. You don't need their permission to be free. Freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with small, quiet choices. Not answering the message that reeks of manipulation. Not explaining yourself when you say no. Not folding just because their voice gets louder. Not trying to fix someone who doesn't want to change. This is what reclaiming yourself looks like, and it feels strange at first. You've spent so long prioritizing someone else's comfort over your own that self-care might feel like selfishness. That silence might feel like abandonment. That happiness might feel unfamiliar. But sit with it. Let the discomfort pass. Because on the other side of that awkward stillness is something you've been searching for your entire life, self-respect. And once you taste it, really taste it, you won't be able to live without it again. Because now you'll know, you were never too sensitive. You were never too needy. You weren't broken. You were just surviving in an environment that punished you for being human. Toxic people don't just hurt you, they train you to hurt yourself. They teach you to doubt your instincts. To silence your needs. To make yourself smaller so they don't feel threatened. They teach you that love equals sacrifice, your sacrifice. And that lesson is hard to unlearn. It lives in your body. In the way you flinch at kindness. In the way you apologize before speaking. In the way you sabotage peace because you've never known life without tension. But the body can relearn. The mind can rebuild. The soul can return. With time. With space. With grace. You will start to notice the red flags faster, not just in others, but in yourself. That urge to please. That fear of saying no. That voice that says, you're too much. And instead of obeying it, you'll pause. You'll breathe. You'll choose differently. That's healing. Not perfection. Not pretending. Just awareness, and new action. You'll also begin to forgive yourself. For staying too long. For not seeing it sooner. For going back, again and again, thinking this time it would be different. Forgive yourself. You weren't weak. You were hopeful. You weren't blind. You were loyal. You weren't broken. You were conditioned. Toxic love has a way of looking like the real thing, especially when it comes from someone close. When the person who was supposed to protect you is the one who hurt you, your whole world turns upside down. You start confusing pain with passion, control with care, silence with strength. But here's the truth, love is not meant to wound you. Love is not supposed to feel like walking on glass. It's not supposed to make you anxious, sick, uncertain. It's not supposed to erase you. The right people won't require you to disappear to make them feel comfortable. They won't punish your honesty. They won't compete with your growth. They won't twist your words until you doubt your sanity. Because when someone is whole within themselves, they don't need to break others to feel powerful. And when you finally build a life without them, a life of your own choosing, you'll realize how much energy you spent just surviving. You'll look back and wonder how you lived like that for so long. Constantly overthinking, walking on eggshells, bracing for the next emotional hit. You'll feel grief, but you'll also feel gratitude. Because you made it out. You made the decision that most people are too scared to make, to end a toxic cycle that's been passed down, normalized, justified for years. And maybe you'll even look back at them, not with anger, but with clarity. With the understanding that they acted from their own wounds, their own fear, their own brokenness. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. And it frees you from carrying their weight. You'll no longer need revenge. You'll no longer want closure from someone who doesn't have the capacity to give it. Because your healing doesn't depend on their awareness. It never did. It depends on you. On your decision to stay awake. To stay conscious. To stop abandoning yourself in the name of loyalty. And the more you choose peace, the more you'll attract people who value it too. People who listen when you speak. People who honor your boundaries. People who don't see your needs as problems, but as invitations to connect more deeply. You'll build a new circle, not overnight, but steadily. A circle where you don't have to earn your place. Where love is offered freely, not as a reward for obedience. Where your scars are seen not as defects, but as proof of survival. And one day, you'll sit across from someone who reminds you of the past. The same manipulative patterns. The same emotional games. And instead of falling back into the old dance, you'll smile quietly and say, "No, thank you. I've already been through that lesson." That's when you'll know. You're not who you were. You're no longer someone who stays in places that hurt. You're someone who protects their light. Someone who walks away, not because they're cold, but because they've finally learned the difference between love and loyalty to pain. And that version of you, the one who walks away with grace, who stands tall in their truth, who refuses to shrink for anyone, that version is the one you've been becoming all along. You will wake up one morning and feel calm. No panic in your chest. No fear of a message that might ruin your day. No pressure to fix someone else's emotions before you've even had your coffee. Just quiet. And maybe for a moment, you won't recognize it. Because your nervous system spent years bracing for the next emotional hit. But now, there's nothing chasing you. No tension. No guilt. Just space. Stillness. Yourself. This is what life can feel like without toxicity. You'll realize that peace was never boring. You just got addicted to chaos. You thought intensity meant love. You thought suffering meant depth. But now you know, love doesn't have to burn in order to be real. It can feel like a soft morning. A slow breath. A conversation where no one raises their voice. You will begin to appreciate the small things again. The sound of your own laugh. The feeling of relaxing your shoulders without realizing. The joy of doing something without fear of criticism. The safety of your own company. Because when you remove a toxic person, you make room for your own life to finally begin. And no, not every day will feel perfect. Healing is not a final destination, it's a lifestyle. Some days you'll still hear their voice in your head. Some nights you'll still dream about them. And occasionally, your mind will wander back and wonder, did I make the right choice? Yes, you did. Even when it hurts. Even when it's lonely. Even when the silence feels louder than the chaos ever was, you made the right choice. You chose to stop abandoning yourself. And that will always be the right decision. You'll notice something else too, how your standards begin to rise. Not just for others, but for yourself. You'll stop accepting half-truths, half-effort, half-love. You'll stop betraying your own feelings just to make others more comfortable. You'll stop settling for people who only love you when it's convenient. You'll expect presence, kindness, honesty, and you'll offer the same in return. Because now you've tasted what it means to honor your worth, and you won't go back. You'll walk into rooms differently. Not with arrogance, but with quiet strength. With the kind of presence that says, I know who I am. I know what I deserve. I don't need chaos to feel alive. And the people who still live in chaos, they'll either rise to meet your energy, or they'll fall away. Let them. You're not here to convince anyone of your value. You're not here to save people from their own patterns. You're here to live, to grow, to love freely, without fear. You've done the hard work, the painful work. You stared the truth in the face and didn't flinch. You held your own hand through the darkness. You walked away from what was destroying you, even though it called itself love. That takes courage. That takes strength most people will never understand. So take a moment, right now, to be proud of yourself. Not because you're all better. Not because your past doesn't hurt anymore. But because you chose yourself in a world that kept asking you to choose everyone else. That's rare. That's radical. That's powerful. And now you get to build a new way of living, a new story. One where you are the author, not a character in someone else's chaos. One where love doesn't come at the price of your dignity. One where you get to wake up and feel safe in your own skin. You'll surround yourself with people who don't just like the idea of you, but who actually see you. Who celebrate your boundaries instead of pushing against them. Who know that love means freedom, not control. And you'll carry your past, not as a burden, but as a compass. As a reminder of what you survived. As proof that even in the deepest pain, you found the strength to stand. You'll look in the mirror and see someone whole. Not perfect, not always certain, but whole. You'll forgive what needs to be forgiven. You'll let go of what needs to be let go. And you'll keep walking forward, step by quiet step, into a life where peace isn't a luxury, it's the foundation. Because you know now, you don't have to stay close to someone who poisons you just because you love them. You don't have to carry relationships that drag you down. You don't have to prove your worth through suffering. You can love people from a distance. You can choose yourself without being cruel. You can break the cycle. And you already have. So keep going. Keep building a life that feels like sunlight. Keep choosing peace over guilt, clarity over confusion, truth over comfort. And when you meet others who are still trapped, who still whisper, "Maybe I'm the problem," you'll look at them with compassion. You'll say, "I know what that feels like. But you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're just waking up." And maybe, your journey will help someone else begin theirs. Because healing is contagious. Freedom inspires. And every time you choose yourself, you give someone else permission to do the same. So walk on. The world needs more people who refuse to settle for pain. And you're already one of them.